Hello there. This is going to be the introduction to the first of what I hope will be many videos reviewing books. One of the things that since I came out as an atheist was how much I found that how much fellow atheists want to learn, myself included, want to learn more about science, want to learn more about philosophy, want to know a little bit more about the world around us and the joy of knowledge. And to that end, I've become a bit of an avid reader, and many other of my fellow atheists have also stated how much they like reading. There have been a number of YouTube videos where people have been holding up their favourite books and saying, you know, I found this one to be really good. So what I thought would be a good idea, almost as a resource really, is to review some of the books that I've read since I've started this journey, as it were. Some of the books will be about science, some of them will be what I would describe as hard atheism, some will be philosophy, and of course I will throw in the odd fiction novel just to make things a little bit more fun. Please bear in mind that what will follow in these videos is my own views personally, how I have enjoyed or not some of the works that I have read over the last several months, and hopefully will continue to read. So this will be, as I say, the first of hopefully many and an ongoing series, and I'm going to start with what was for me the book that started it all. Back in October 2006, I was in the middle of studying for an exam, work related, but it was going to be a very difficult exam. I spent a lot of time in bookshops looking for study materials, question answer books, crammers, that sort of thing. And one day in this October I was in a branch of my local bookshop buying a question answer book, I recall, where out of the corner of my eye I actually saw this. The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. Now, I had always been a non-believer. I've always been an atheist. Pretty much most of my in fact all of my adult life. I came to the conclusion long ago that the whole idea of religion was, to me, a nonsense. But it wasn't something that I spoke out about. Whenever friends had debate while in the pub, I generally tried to steer clear of it because I was not a very good debater. I was very good at doing presentations, but actual spontaneous debates I was never any good at, so I tended to stay away. And I didn't know a lot of the arguments. I knew some of the arguments for, I knew some of the arguments against, but I didn't really go into it in great detail. But it was certainly something I was interested in, and I'd remembered Richard Dawkins's documentary that had been shown that previous January on Channel 4 on British television, called The Root of All Evil. And I remember I enjoyed it immensely, and I agreed with pretty much all that was said in it. But I knew if I bought this book that it would take me away from my studies, and the studies were very important. But in the end I thought, sod it, and I bought the book anyway. I started reading it that very day, and I finished it in 3 days flat. Now, it's not very often that I get a book where that happens. I've had a couple since, but not very many. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about it for this review. Now, Richard Dawkins, as I'm sure you're aware, is a zoology professor. His specialism is evolutionary biology. He's also probably one of the world's most famous militant atheists. The God Delusion, he said, was a book that he wanted to write for a long time, and I have to say it was very well written. Although he is an academic, and there were one or two rather academically long words in there. Well, there weren't too many, and these are words that I very much have learnt and now understand. The book itself, as I say, it's written for the ordinary reader. It's quite a chunky book, 400 pages, which so I was quite impressed that I managed to get through it in 3 days. All divided up into sections. The sections follow a very good progression, starting off with an introduction talking about the God hypothesis. Then it goes on to the arguments for God's existence, which he takes apart. Now, Some of these I'd never heard of, and some of these were arguments that I'd never even had a good explanation for. I'd heard of but couldn't answer. For example, I was never able to answer the infinite regression arguments, for example. Then it goes on to for the arguments for the non-existence of God, or rather that why there almost certainly is no God. And I talked about other things such as roots of religion and morality and all that. Now there was always some very good answers in there which I'd never been aware of before. They are fairly simple. They don't go into any great detail. But what I would say about this book is, for those who are interested in the subject, it is a very, very good start. It's a starting point, because I remember after finishing it, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to read more, and there's certainly plenty of references in the book to springboard you into looking through the subject and studying it. It also has its weaknesses, because it is very much a starting point. It could have gone into a lot more detail in certain areas. Cosmology, for example, the cosmological arguments that are raised quite often are arguments that I sometimes have problems answering. I couldn't answer beforehand. The last chapter I thought was a bit weak, where he starts talking about quantum theory. Even he, though, admits that he was slipping into rhetoric rather than actual science. But I learned many things. For example, I always believed that the process of evolution was a matter of random chance. That was one of those things that I always thought, and was still more plausible than the existence of a God. But set me straight on a few things there. So, as I say, it has a few weaknesses, but not too many. It's a highly enjoyable book and very, very good starting point. If you have been in the atheism game, as it were, for a long time, you may find this fairly uninspiring and unoriginal. Those that are very familiar with the work of Richard Dawkins will find some of his arguments in some of his earlier books reworked into here. But I thought this was a very good book, an excellent starting point, and one that has led me to speaking up, to putting these videos on, and has led me to learn a lot more in the last few months since that October than I ever thought I'd ever know since then. Oh, and as an aside, I did pass my exam. So until the next book review, 4 out of 5 I think I give Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion. I hope you find that useful, and I look forward to chatting with you again with the next review. Until then, keep it real.